Hi everyone, this is lecture 10.2. In this one, we're going to be talking about American religion and global religion. So first we're going to talk about religion as it exists in the United States, and then we're going to look at a bit of a catalog of global religions. By comparison to other countries similar to ourselves, such as the UK, Australia, Japan, Germany, uh, the United States is unusually religious. We are much more religious than other countries similar to ourselves. This is reflected in some broad statistics. 77% of American adults profess membership to a religion. This, when we compare to European counterparts such as the UK or Germany, Germany is considered to be a very religious country, wherein about 55% of Germans report to be members of a religion. 55% of Americans say that they pray daily. Now, what exactly pray daily means, I'm not quite sure. Is this prayers someone takes when they're trying to drive super fast to work? It's like, oh my God, can I do this? Or is this prayers over meals? Or is this some other kind of prayer? It's hard to say. And then additionally, 20% of Americans say that they, quote, share their faith online regularly. Does this mean that they're part of some kind of message board online where they're reading a book together? Or is that just like your aunt sharing kind of Facebook chain mails saying, share with 5 people if you love Jesus? It's not quite sure what exactly sharing faith online means. Here are some more meaningful statistics. 71% of Americans report that they are Christian. Now, with that in mind, when we compare ourselves to other countries, we are the most religiously diverse country in the world. Now, that seems like a bit of a misstatement, with 71% of us being Christian, the vast majority being Christian, but where that statement of religiously diverse comes from is in the variants of Christianity present in the United States. We'll talk about that in a few slides. 23% of Americans then say that they are unaffiliated with a given religion. This includes atheists, people who are agnostic, or people who say that they are not religious but spiritual. Again, that's a very tough category too. But 23% of total Americans say that they're unaffiliated in some way. Then, our second largest organized religion in the United States is Judaism, with about 2% of the population. Our Muslim population is 0.9% of the population, and our Buddhist percent of the population is 0.7%. Obviously, then, in urban areas, you will see a much higher percentage of Jews, Muslims, and Buddhists. And then in rural areas, you might see much closer to even 90% Christian in some rural areas. Youth and young adults are less likely to claim religious affiliation than older adults. Data show that unaffiliated people, including both youth and non-youth, are more likely than the affiliated to be critical of religion. What does that mean? That means if you're part of a religion, you are less likely to be critical of religion. If you're not part of a religion, you're more likely to be critical. Now, those who are critical say that religious organizations are overly concerned with money or power. That's one critique. Another critique is that religions are too focused on rules. And yet another critique is that religions are too closely involved in politics. And there is truth behind some of those statements and misconceptions behind some of those statements as well. Now, if you are like myself, I grew up in a mainline Protestant church, specifically in the Presbyterian Church. There was always a perception growing up that fewer and fewer and fewer people are going to church. So that always kind of puzzled us as to why are fewer people going to church, that was our perception, but the reality of the matter is that since the 1950s, church membership has actually been growing steadily. And while church membership at certain churches have gone down, church attendance at other churches, namely conservative evangelical churches, have gone up. Most particularly in these organizations that are often called mega churches, with very, very large congregations with thousands of people there. There are, where I live, many people in many mega churches in central Ohio, and you can see them from the highway. Those are the types of churches that are the ones that are actually growing. And when we say conservative in this regard, we are talking about people who are politically conservative and evangelicals. The definition of evangelical means the type of Christian that thinks that it is important for their religion to spread and get more Christians. That doesn't apply to all Christians, but it does apply to this type of Christian. And as I alluded to, for many people, political beliefs are shaped by their faiths. And as I mentioned, this is especially true for conservative evangelicals, but it does also apply to non-Christians as well. In particular, there is a religion called the Unitarian Universalists, most common here in the United States, wherein the Unitarian Universalists believe that all religions have inherent value, and every religion is effectively speaking to the spirit of religion in one way or another. Unitarians tend to be a very leftist, liberal, Democrat, if you will, organizations. So while evangelical churches tend to be much more conservative, much more Republican oriented, Unitarian churches tend to be much more liberal, much more democratic oriented, and those people as well also think that their religious faith is important in their political lives as well. So it's not just conservative groups that have this angle of religion and politics going together. There are other groups as well that see that as being an appropriate thing. So now we're going to look at some of the religions as they exist around the world. With this said, I am condensing thousands of years of learning into a couple slides, so I am definitely leaving some things out. So, in terms of numbers, our major world religions include Christianity. Christianity is the largest global religion. There are 2 billion Christians in the world. Islam has 1.5 billion followers. Islam is the second largest global religion, but the fastest growing global religion based on size. Hinduism then has 828 million followers. The majority of Hindus do live in the geographic region of India, but there are a lot of Hindus in the United States. Buddhists, there are 400 million Buddhists. And Judaism, there are 14 million Jews in the world. That should be noted that Judaism is not the fifth largest global religion, but it is based on influence there. Because Judaism has such a heavy influence on both Christianity and Islam, it's on that list. And also it should be pointed out that 9 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. So those numbers likely would have been much higher had that horrendous historic event not occurred. So there are 2 billion Christians in the world. Major teacher of Christianity, Jesus of Nazareth, the guy called Jesus. Central tenets of Christianity. Now, where I have central tenets on these lists, many global religions have a specific list of these are the things you believe to be part of the religion. That is not as present in Christianity. I mean, the 10 Commandments is there. There are some other things that are there, but that kind of list of beliefs is more structured in other religions. But Christians do have some things that they all believe. Jesus as being the divine Son of God. So that is something all Christians believe. Acceptance of Jesus' teachings. that human fell from God's grace via sin somehow, and that if a Christian asks Jesus for forgiveness, then they will be forgiven. Now, a couple of things that are layered on there. There are 2 billion Christians in the world. Those numbers alone speak to the tremendous diversity of the religion itself, right? So each of these tenets is interpreted in many, many different ways, depending on the type of Christian that you're talking to. Additionally, then, I want to restate what I said in my last lecture. When we're talking about these things, I often slip into talking as if I am a part of that faith, because it's the easiest way to talk about it. I am by no means trying to recruit you for any of these religions, or unrecruit you, if you will. On the slide, we see 3 images of Christians. The top is an image of Christian Orthodox priests. Christian Orthodoxy is most commonly found in Greece, Eastern Europe, and Russia. The next image down is an image of Marian Catholics, so it's a specific version of Catholicism found often in Lebanon and countries close to there in the near Middle East, if you will. And then the bottom image is of a American Christian snake handler. This is an American variant on Christianity, in which they believe that in handling poisonous snakes as part of their religious services, they are showing their faith in God. All of these are very, very different groups of people, and they kind of illustrate the great variety in Christianity. You may not know that there are many, many types of Christians. This is a highly simplistic branching tree showing the different versions of Christianity, and you can just see there's a whole big list there. And for example, it just says Methodist there. There are at least 3 different kinds of Methodists by a modest accounting for. And all of these has many, many variations on that there. Many, many types of Catholics, many, many types of Presbyterians. This is just an example. Additionally, not all Christians reject science. That is something that we see. The relationship of the religion is determined by the certain variant on Christianity. Some denominations are much more scientifically minded, others are not. And then not all churches oppose same-sex marriage or full inclusion of people of the LGBTQ plus community. As a matter of fact, this is often a variation within denominations. So there is not that much variation between, say, Methodists, Lutherans, and Presbyterians in this regard, but within the Methodist Church, within the Presbyterian Church, there are conflicts within the denominations themselves. One of the longest standing conflicts of this regard has been found in the Methodist Church from about the 1980s continuing to the modern day. The conflict is getting to be almost 40 years old as to how to, or whether they should fully include LGBTQ plus in the church itself. So to simply say that Christians exclude or include people of the LGBTQ plus community, it's a broad overstatement. Islam then has 1.5 billion followers. A major teacher within Islam is the Prophet Muhammad. There again, as with Christianity, many, many leaders within Islam of different levels of prominence. There are 5 central tenets to Islam. And this, as I mentioned with Christianity, there are things that Christians specifically believe. Well, in Islam, they say these are the 5 things you have to do to be a Muslim. And we see this in global religions. So faith in Allah is the first tenet of Islam. They believe that to be a Muslim, you have to believe in God, you have to believe in Allah. If you're not familiar with Arabic, the word Allah simply means the God. Al means the, La means God. Additionally, then, Muslims believe, and it is laid out in the Quran, that Jews and Christians are what they call people of the book. So they should have good and community relationships with both Christians and Jews. That is specifically within Islam, and that is part of that concept of faith. Salah, then, or prayer, is the second tenet of Islam, that the Muslim is supposed to pray 5 times each day. And that prayer is not supposed to be the "I would like something from you, God" prayer, or "please protect me, God" prayer. It is supposed to be "Oh God, you are so great" prayer. So 5 times a day, a Muslim is supposed to pause and do kind of a structured praise of Allah. That's what that element is. Fasting during the holy month of Ramadan, that is one of the tenets of Islam. So during that month of Ramadan, which is based on a lunar calendar, Muslims are expected from sun up to sundown to not eat food, and if they can, not drink liquids. Now, one element of that is sometimes not understood by people who aren't Muslims is that in the nighttime during Ramadan, you're allowed to eat and drink. Go for it, right? Additionally, then, if your health is at risk, if you are just getting over a stomach bug, if you are a woman who is pregnant, etc., those expectations are not expected of you, because a very important element of Islam is that your faith should not hurt your health. So there are accommodations there in fasting. Again, at least among Muslims in the Western world. Almsgiving, very similar to the Christian concept of offering, is part of Islam. If I remember correctly, within Islam, it's laid out specifically in the Quran that it's supposed to be about 3% of your income. It doesn't explicitly lay that out in the Bible for Christians, exactly how much of your income it's supposed to be. Tithing is a common idea, but within the Quran it says very specifically 3%. I think that's quite interesting. And then the Hajj is another element of being a Muslim, in which the Muslim is expected at least once in their life to go to Mecca and do that series of religious rituals, if at all possible. If you are a Muslim living in Israel or living in Saudi Arabia, you bet that's expected of you. Muslims that live in the Western Hemisphere over the oceans from Mecca, where it would be very expensive to be able to do that, that is not as considered, that's not as seen as being as critical. You might not know that non-Orthodox Muslim women are not required to wear hijab. They're not required to wear the religious covering. That is seen as a choice by Muslims in our society and most Western societies. Variants that we see on the religious covering are largely dependent from society to society. The variant we see most commonly in the United States is hijab. It should be noted that there are religious dress that are required of men as well in Islam, but we tend not to notice that as much as non-Muslims, because those dress requirements tend to match a little closer to what men in our society wear. So we tend not to notice them as much. You may not know that the vast majority of Muslims reject violence. This is a very ugly stereotype of Islam. That this word jihad is best translated as meaning religious struggle. And this concept is often misused by both extremists within Islam to try to advocate for their militant ideology, extremist fundamentalists there, but also people who are Islamophobic, people who are prejudiced against Muslims also tend to overemphasize this idea of Islam being inherently violent. The simple fact of the matter is that jihad means religious struggle, and it can be applied to any religious struggle. For example, you can have a personal jihad to stop smoking. You can have a personal jihad to be nicer to your neighbors. No violence there whatsoever. It's very deeply unfortunate that this religious concept has been very badly misused by people effectively seeking power through history. And we don't just see this in Islam. We see this in Christianity. We see this in Buddhism. We see this in most global religions, certain people abusing the religion for effectively what they want. Hinduism, then. Hinduism, there are 8.28 million Hindus in the world. And anyway, there is no central leader to Hinduism, which I find quite intriguing. There is no Jesus or Muhammad type figure within Hinduism. So there is no central church, there is no central hierarchy. And that is a concept that is quite alien to our ideas of religion in the United States. The central tenets of Hinduism, because there is no central leader or no central hierarchy, the central tenets are far more diverse, but in general, Hindus believe that they should be dedicated to a certain god or collection of local gods that may vary on what the people in your hometown worship or your family's gods or whatever. Dharma. So additionally then, this interconnection of these spiritual forces called dharma, karma, reincarnation, and moksha. Those four listed there really are one tenet. It's this belief in how reincarnation works. So the Hindu believes that over the course of our lives, we do dharmic acts. And in those dharmic acts that are either good or bad, our soul collects energy. That energy is called karma, spiritual cause and effect. And over the course of our lifetimes, our soul builds up positive karma or negative karma. And then after we die, depending on whether we have a positive karmic charge or a negative karmic charge, that determines how we are reincarnated into our next life back into this world. Now, interestingly, Hindus are not, they don't want to be reincarnated. That is not the goal of a Hindu, is to be reincarnated. The goal of a Hindu is to achieve a state of moksha. So to die with such a high degree of karma that the soul is then reabsorbed back into the what could be called the Godhead, or what in Western religions we frequently call God itself. So you may not know, tying in with that Hindu devas or gods serve as representations of some aspect of the same supreme being. This is a common interpretation within Hinduism, not the only one, but a common one, that all of the gods are representations of the same central deity. So thus, in that way, it would not be out of line to interpret Hinduism as kind of being monotheistic, quite intriguingly. I find that very interesting. But then also, not only are all of the gods part of that same supreme being and reflections of that same supreme being, but so are us humans as well. So if we would achieve that state of moksha, then we would go back into being part of that God with a capital G energy there. That's really one of the big beliefs within Hinduism. Buddhism, then, there are 400 million followers of Buddhism in the world called Buddhists. Major teachers of Buddhism include the Buddha, who was a historic figure known as Siddhartha Gautama, and the 14th Dalai Lama, who is said to be the 14th reincarnation of a monk named Gendun Drup. The Buddha is that central founder of the religion itself. The 14th Dalai Lama, he is the leader of Tibetan Buddhism. So just like the Pope is not the leader of all Christians, the Dalai Lama is the leader of only Tibetan Buddhists and not all Buddhists. Buddhists are non-theistic, but some types of Buddhists do believe in spiritual beings and entities that we would call gods. It really depends on the variant of Buddhism. There are 4 noble truths to Buddhism. So the first noble truth being we are caught in endless suffering and rebirth as the result of karma. So we are stuck getting reincarnated over and over again. The second noble truth is that suffering results from desire or attachment. And this word suffering is not the best translation for that there. The better translation is kind of misalignment, or I've heard it being called messed upness, right? Not quite being in line with the way of the universe. Suffering is not, again, like I said, not the best translation, but that condition of not greatness, the Buddhist would say, is the result of us being attached to things and desiring things. And then that suffering ends by achieving nirvana, which is said to be a blissful state of emptiness that may occur for an individual at the end of this life, or that person could get reincarnated again. And then following the Eightfold Path is also seen as being important to Buddhism. So here we have a list of belief things within a list of belief things, which again is semi-unique for Buddhism. So the Eightfold Path, the things that are expected of all Buddhists, is ethical behavior, a simple lifestyle or as simple as you can manage, the renunciation of material pleasures, and meditation. These are qualities that are considered very good for Buddhists to seek out. And I'll leave that there. I could go into a lot of nuance. You may not know that the Buddha and Buddhas are not seen as gods, but seen as teachers. So there is the Buddha with a capital B, but there are also many Buddhas. And Buddhists do not worship these entities, they attempt to learn from them. So often if you would see a Buddhist meditating, it would look like they're praying and worshiping the statuary or that entity. What they are doing is attempting to learn from the lessons of the entity, which is different. And then some types of Buddhists also could be considered atheists, particularly Zen Buddhists. Within Zen Buddhism, one interpretation is, and a key to Zen Buddhism is that the simplest answer to all things is the correct answer. So from that standpoint then, the simplest answer to everything is that there is no God. So that must be the Zen answer. That's only one answer, one interpretation Zen Buddhists have. Different Zen Buddhists have different attitudes in that regard, certainly. But you would not be considered inherently not Buddhist or not Zen Buddhist if you wouldn't believe in a central God, especially a central creator God. Judaism. There are 14 million Jews in the world. Judaism is much less leader-oriented than Christianity and Islam. So major leaders within Judaism include Moses, King Solomon, and the patriarch Abraham. Uh, but none of those are of the same figure and stature as I mentioned, Muhammad and Jesus are. The central tenets of Judaism are worship of and reverence for God, and also the community of the Jewish people is seen as intensely important to Judaism, and also remembering collective history. Those are very, very important to the faith. You may not know that belief in an afterlife is not seen as central to Judaism. And this is a matter of a very long historic theological debate. You can be a very faithful and very devout Orthodox Jew and not believe in an afterlife. You could even be a fundamentalist Jew and not believe in an afterlife, and that wouldn't be weird. It's just not one of the central elements of it. Additionally, then, because Jews see themselves as God's chosen people, then they do not have the duty to convert others to the faith as some variants of Christians and Muslims see, right? So Jews do not recruit, is one way to put it, right? And many faiths actually do not have that central drive to recruit new people to be part of their faith. Which again is an intriguing thing if you're only familiar with Christianity or maybe Islam. Other world religions include indigenous animism, Baha'i, atheism, Sikhism, Confucianism, or Taoism, and I was corrected a few terms back. Those are two different faiths, Taoism and Confucianism. Jainism, spiritualism, Neopaganism, Rastafarianism, Unitarianism, Zoroastrianism, Scientology is also a world religion, and then also smaller sects and cults. These are all global religion. There are many more global religions. If you think, really, every time I consider religion, there are so many more of them than I even know about, than most people know about. And it's quite an intriguing sociological topic. Okay, that is it for now. If you have any questions, please let me know.